once the animal's genotyped, then ICBF have that genotype. And we're currently working on implementing these pipelines into the ICBF pipelines so that when an animal's genotype comes in, it'll be flagged if they have an extra or missing chromosome. And at that stage, then we're hoping to be able to contact the farmer and just say, look, there's a chance that your animal is going to be infertile.
It's great to be back with another Environment Edge podcast, and you're very welcome to the show.
Were you aware that 1,500 calves annually are affected by chromosomal abnormality in Ireland, which often is not identified on farm until issues arrive, such as infertility and premature death as calves?
Dr. Cliona Ryan, genetics and genomics postdoc researcher in Teagasc Moorepark, joins us to discuss new research methods and how to easily identify this issue. I'm Cathal Summers.
And I'm Deirdre Glenn,
your Teagasc Sustainability Advisors. And we're back for another Environment Edge podcast number 96. And here we go.
Can you tell me a little bit about what chromosomal abnormalities are in cattle? I think that's part of your research at the moment, is it?
Yeah, so I did my PhD on investigating chromosomal abnormalities in cattle. And basically what that means is that there's just an issue with the chromosome number that the animal has. So they either have an extra chromosome or else they're missing a chromosome. So there's conditions like this in humans as well. It's not just limited to cattle. So an example would be, say, Down syndrome in humans, which is when someone has an extra copy of chromosome 21, or Turner syndrome, which is when females are missing an X chromosome. So these conditions are also in cattle. And the issue with them in cattle is that animals are generally infertile if they have an extra or missing chromosome, or else they can die on farm prematurely.
Gosh, okay. And it's that information is kind of transferable from the human population as well. I suppose that's, you were saying earlier, just before we came on, that, you know, a lot of these research, this research has been done in people up to now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is fantastic. How common do you think it is, Cliona, in animals?
So in the Irish population, there's about 0.062% of cattle in Ireland are born with this, which sounds very low, but it actually translates to about 1,500 calves born in Ireland every year that are expected to have either an extra or missing chromosome. And I suppose the biggest issue with this is that these animals generally look completely normal. So a farmer wouldn't be able to pick them out and say, oh, she has an extra chromosome. So that's the big issue with this, because they are generally infertile, but they look completely normal. So it's just, how do we actually identify these animals? So that's kind of where my research came in then.
And is it more prevalent in a particular breed or in a particular sex?
No, so we looked at beef and dairy cattle, and we looked at the different breeds and sex, and there's nothing that's more prevalent than another. It's just completely random, basically.
Is there a lot of information in the database, say going back like generationally, to make a link between, say, like years and years of a particular breed or years and years of a particular animal type?
Yeah, so I got my data from ICBF, which is obviously a massive database. So we had about 2 million genotypes that I was looking at. So obviously, like, these animals are generally infertile, so it's not a condition that's passed down. It's just it just happens randomly. So like, say there were certain dams there and they had like one offspring that had this condition and all the rest of them were completely normal. So it's just completely random.
It just crossed my mind there when you were talking a second ago about 1,500 calves, fertility issues. And I remember back like 20, 30, 25 years ago, people coming into the yard trying to sell us fertility buckets and lick blocks and tablets and medicine, all sorts of stuff. And I'm just wondering now, are we feeding this stuff to try and solve a problem we couldn't fix? But I suppose my question is, like, is the main importance to the industry, is it fertility or is there other things as well? Is it performance issues, or is it mainly fertility that's the big, I suppose, the reason why that you're looking into this research?
So I suppose before we even looked into this research, we didn't even know if cattle with this condition existed. Like it was literally a question like, can cows have conditions like Down syndrome? And anyone that I was telling I was doing my research on this, they were like, what? What does this even mean? So we didn't actually know what the implications would be, like if they'd be fertile, if they wouldn't be. Initially, we were just trying to see, could we use genotypes to find these animals because they obviously look normal. And then once I had those animals found, then we did look into the symptoms that they had. So the fertility is the biggest issue. So yeah, most of them are all infertile, and obviously it costs about 1,500 to rear a dairy heifer. So it's just like if we can tell the farmer when the calf is born that she has an extra or missing chromosome and that she's probably going to be infertile, do you know, it's great because then he doesn't have to spend 1,500 rearing an infertile heifer at that stage. And then the second big issue is that a lot of these animals actually die prematurely on farm. So I won't get too much into the genetic side of things, but basically there's two types of chromosomes. So there's sex chromosomes, which is the X and the Y, and then there's the rest of the chromosomes, so not sex chromosomes. So all the animals with a sex chromosome duplication or deletion were infertile, but animals that had non-sex chromosome duplications, they were the ones that actually died prematurely on farm. So we found about 140 cattle that had an extra non-sex chromosome, and actually 61% of those animals died on farm. So most of them died within 2 weeks of age, but some of them just died on farm up to 32 months of age. So obviously, like if an animal's going to die on farm, it's useful for a farmer to know that because they're not going to get any revenue for that animal, and it's just a lot of costs in feeding them and keeping them.
Yeah, yeah, like it makes sense. At least if you know what's ahead of you, you can make a decision.
Yeah,
Like
that's
you,
exactly
yeah,
it.
and even the fertility thing, like if you know that animal's not fertile, you can rear it for a different reason, not to breed, but maybe to fatten or something. So at least you have options. Just one technical question: when
Yeah.
you mentioned the deletion of a chromosome, so that means if you're missing one that you're meant to have. So I understand
Yeah.
that. But are all our chromosomes individual? So we shouldn't have two of the one chromosome, should we?
So we have two copies of every chromosome.
Okay.
So basically, then if there's a deletion, that means that we just have one copy of that
Yeah.
chromosome. And if there's a duplication, we actually have three copies of that chromosome instead of two.
Oh, getcha. Oh, an imbalance then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how do you identify the chromosomal abnormalities? What's the science behind it?
So I suppose traditionally, these chromosome abnormalities were identified using a method called karyotyping. So what this is, it involves taking a blood sample from the animal and then just staining the chromosomes and looking at the chromosomes under the microscope. So physically actually counting the number of chromosomes that are in that blood sample. So the issue with that method, though, is that it's costly and it's very labor intensive. It takes like a good few weeks to do, and it costs around €60 per animal. So to screen the entire Irish cattle population, like we're talking about 150 million annually just to identify these animals. So then as part of my PhD, we looked at the genotypes that were collected through NGP to see if we could tell if the animal had an extra chromosome or a missing one. So without trying to get too technical into this, but basically we just quantified the amount of DNA that was present in each chromosome for the genotyped animal. So we compared the amount of DNA in each chromosome to the amount of DNA that was expected. So if there was more DNA in a particular chromosome than is expected, it indicates that the animal has three copies of that chromosome instead of two. And if there was less, it indicates that that animal has just one copy instead of two. So then we collected bloods then from some of those animals that we suspected had chromosomal abnormalities, and we did the karyotyping method on them. And then those animals were confirmed to have chromosomal abnormalities.
But if the mother if the mum is fine, it might necessarily follow through that the calf will be fine. Is that it?
Yeah, so it's just completely random. It's during
Yeah.
like meiosis and, the failure of chromosomes to separate properly. So it's just completely random. Yeah.
And is it a percentage of the cattle nationally that are tested?
Yeah, what I did was I just tested all of the cattle that were genotyped. And then we got a prevalence of that. So it was about 0.062% of cattle in Ireland had it.
Just so I had a quick look at the figures there when you mentioned €60 per animal to do the old karyotyping, is that what you call it, system?
Yeah.
So I can imagine going onto a farm and saying, right, every calf that's born, I want you to take blood samples, stick it under microscope and count it physically, and it's €60 sample, and 100 cows is 6,000 or €6,000 per year. So that's really expensive and really
Yeah.
time consuming. So I love the idea of what you're going at. So you need to have the DNA profiles from the National Cattle Genotyping Scheme. What percentage of animals across the country is there DNA available, or what roughly how much availability of DNA profiles are there if you wanted to upscale this across the country?
I think there's about 40% of all the
Okay,
animals in Ireland are genotyped at the moment. And that obviously is increasing with NGP as well.
yeah.
So there are lots of animals that are there that we can test for already.
Oh, that's a huge amount because when I was doing the figures on the €60 per calf,
Yeah.
if you're only talking about 1,500 calves across the country that this can arise, the farmer's going to take the chance, like, and not go with the €60. But if you can do it
Oh,
with
yeah.
the DNA, it just makes complete sense. And do you foresee then that 40% rising then over the next, say, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because sure, all of the calves that are born into NGP, they're all going to be genotyped over the next couple of years. So that number is definitely going to increase.
So it's just going to get better and better then for what you're trying to achieve. And what's is there cost then to the farmer then for this, or is it just it's in the database? So
No, it's in the database. So it's like you said, if you went out to a farmer and you said, okay, we're going to take bloods from 100 of your animals just to check if they have this really rare condition. Like because it's so rare, it's not really worthwhile if someone has to pay €60 to do. So at least with this way, the farmer doesn't actually have to do anything. Once the animal's genotyped, then ICBF have that genotype. And we're currently working on implementing these pipelines into the ICBF pipelines so that when an animal's genotype comes in, it'll be flagged if they have an extra or missing chromosome. And at that stage, then we're hoping to be able to contact the farmer and just say, look, there's a chance that your animal is going to be infertile.
you could nearly have like an algorithm or something to search for this and find it, so that wouldn't be too labor intensive on people.
Oh yeah, no, that's exactly it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be completely automated.
Yeah. And I have a feeling just the way that you're talking that you're looking at some specific things at the moment, but potentially maybe down the road there might be other things you'll be able to look at in the same way, or other things you can identify.
Yeah, hopefully at the moment we're also looking at this across species. So we were in a collaboration with Horse Board Ireland and we were looking at it in horses as well. So we've that done now and we found that horses can have these conditions as well. So next we're hoping to do it in sheep too.
What are the benefits to farmers and industry going forward for an escalation of this genotyping?
I suppose the main benefit for farmers is just purely from a cost perspective. We can tell the farmer now when a calf is born that there's a good chance she's going to be infertile, so don't keep her as a replacement. So that's, huge for farmers. And then even from industry, like if we were to say even just karyotype the AI bulls annually. So that would cost the industry about 600,000 if we were to do this using the karyotyping method. Whereas now we can test all of this for free. So it's just really saving a lot of money.
Because you do hear of instances where bulls on farms are infertile. And
Yeah.
if they had been tested before, it would have saved the farmer an abject fortune, really, wouldn't it?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Yeah.
It goes back to that old thing though, and I've even heard it this year, people being caught out on animals not going in calf, just relying on one bull maybe to run it to herd, and it goes back to make sure that you split the pot and you have a few, I suppose, and do your AI and stuff as well. But
But it's great to know that this is available
uh,
because a lot of people wouldn't even know it was available. And a lot of farmers on farms would have animals within the herds that aren't thriving or, they're behind on formation. And it could be either that it's Downs or it's something else. And
Yeah.
it's not something that they can actually cure, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. One of the farmers that I rang to ask if we could come and take bloods just to validate that this worked. She had an extra not sex chromosome, and he was like, "Oh my God, this makes so much sense," because she was always smaller than the rest of them and like just was not thriving. And he said like from the time she was born, he knew that there was something different about her, but he was like, I never knew what it was. Yeah, so he was buying like licks and everything, trying to like help her thrive, but that's it.
Like Cahill's farmers,
Yeah.
Exactly.
doing
Yeah.
everything that they could to try and
Yeah.
sort it out, but it just was something that wasn't going to happen. I think this is a fantastic research.
You
Yeah.
know, those type of animals always become the pet on the farm, don't they? They always
Yeah,
get a name as
exactly.
well. I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to get you to clarify it. So, because I think you've said it a few times, but if we do identify that there's a problem, and we want to be proactive with our measures, there's not much we can do to stop this happening. It's completely random, is it? There's no plan we can place to stop this happening.
No, so like say it's completely random for animals being born with it. Like it's not something that's inherited because the
Yeah,
animals are infertile, so it actually can't be passed down. Um, so yeah, there's nothing really that can be
yeah.
done to stop it. But it's just kind of once it's there, how can we deal with it as early as possible?
Is there much money being invested in this at the moment? Is there an industry-wide interest in it?
I suppose it's all quite new, to be honest. Like I'm
Yeah.
still working with ICBF on the implementation of it. So it's kind of at the moment we're just trying to raise awareness about it because it is very much new.
What's next? Are you kind of planning a pilot project in a part of the country, or how do you plan to scale it up, I suppose?
Well, what's next is just the implementation of it in ICBF pipelines because then anytime an animal's genotyped, then once the automated system's there, it'll come up for them. So then we can just let farmers know then.
This is so important because when we look at sustainability on farms and we even look at the Teagasc Moorepark curve, one of the big things is animal health and trying to be able to manage, come up with systems like you've come up with that we can manage our farms and manage our animal health. And I think this is the type of information that farmers will really like, especially if it's made accessible to them, that they can get it easy and it doesn't take much work.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't have to pay anything extra for it either.
Oh, everybody likes a freebie.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we mightn't like the results, but no, but I think when myself and Deirdre came across this, we thought it was really interesting, and I know farmers would be interested in, it, especially if you can get the information, and certainly look forward to seeing what you're going to come up with over the next number of years and see this coming onto the ground because I'm pretty sure farmers will be interested in this, and I think I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with, and wish you the very best of luck in your work, and hopefully we'll chat to you again in the future to see how you're getting on.
Thanks very much.
So there you have it. Tune in next time to hear more interesting chats and discussion.
Myself and Deirdre will be back in 2 weeks' time, but do give us a review on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening to the Environment Edge podcast.